The Muses, эмjuːzᵻz, in Greek mythology, are the inspirational goddesses of literature, science, and the arts. They were considered the source of the knowledge embodied in the poetry, lyric songs, and myths that were related orally for centuries in these ancient cultures. They were later adopted by the Romans as a part of the pantheon. In current English usage, muse can refer in general to a person who inspires an artist, writer, or musician. Number and names. The earliest known records of the 9 Muses are from Boeotia, the homeland of ʻmjuːzᵻz. Some ancient authorities thought that the 9 Muses were of Thracian origin. A tradition persisted that the Muses had once been 3 in number. In the 1st century BC, Diodorus Siculus quotes ʻmjuːzᵻz to the contrary, observing, "Writers similarly disagree also concerning the number of the Muses, for some say that there are 3, and others that there are 9. But the number 9 has prevailed since it rests upon the authority of the most distinguished men, such as Homer and ʻmjuːzᵻ and others like them." Diodorus also states that Osiris first recruited the 9 Muses, along with the satyrs or male dancers, while passing through Ethiopia, before embarking on a tour of all Asia and Europe, teaching the arts of cultivation wherever he went. According to ʻmjuːzᵻ's account, generally followed by the writers of antiquity, the 9 Muses were the 9 daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, figuring as personifications of knowledge and the arts, especially literature, dance and music. The Roman scholar Varro relates that there are only 3 Muses: one who was born from the movement of water, another who makes sound by striking the air, and a third who is embodied only in the human voice. They were again called melite or practice, mneme or memory, and aoide or song. 3 ancient Muses were also reported in Plutarch's Questions Conviviales. However, the classical understanding of the Muses tripled the triad, and established a set of 9 goddesses, who embody the arts and inspire creation with the graces through remembered and improvised song and mime, writing, traditional music, and dance. It was not until Hellenistic times that the following systematic set of functions was assigned to them, and even then there was some variation in both the names and their attributes. Calliope, Clio, Euterpe, Thalia, Melpomene, Terpsichore, Arieto, Polyhymnia, Urania. According to Pausanias, in the later 2nd century AD, there were 3 original Muses, worshipped on Mount Helicon in Boeotia: Aoide, Melete, and Mneme. Together, these 3 form the complete picture of the preconditions of poetic art in cult practice. In Delphi 3 Muses were worshipped as well, but with other names: Ente, эмjuːzᵻz, and Hypate, which are assigned as the names of the 3 chords of the ancient musical instrument, the lyre. Alternatively, they later were called Cephis, Apollonus, and Borysthenes, which names characterized them as daughters of Apollo. In later tradition, a set of 4 Muses were recognized: Thelsino, Aoideash, and Melete, said to be daughters of Zeus, and Plusia, or of Uranus. One of the people frequently associated with the Muses was Pierus. By some he was called the father of a total of 7 Muses, called Neal, Tritne, Asip, Heptapora, Achelois, Tippopol, and Rhodia. Mythology. According to ʻmjuːzᵻ's theogony, they were daughters of Zeus, the 2nd generation king of the gods, and the offspring of Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. For Alcman and Mimnemus, they were even more primordial, springing from the early deities, Uranus and Gaia. Gaia is Mother Earth, an early mother goddess who was worshipped at Delphi from prehistoric times, long before the site was rededicated to Apollo, possibly indicating a transfer to association with him after that time. Sometimes the Muses are referred to as water nymphs, associated with the springs of Helicon and with Pyrrhus. It was said that the winged horse Pegasus touched his hooves to the ground on Helicon, causing 4 sacred springs to burst forth, from which the Muses were born. Athena later tamed the horse and presented him to the Muses. Classical writers set Apollo as the leader, Apollon эмjuːzᵻz. In one myth, the Muses judged a contest between Apollo and Marsyas. They also gathered the pieces of the dead body of Orpheus, son of Calliope, and buried them. In a later myth, Thamyris challenged them to a singing contest. They won and punished Thamyris by blinding him and robbing him of his singing ability. According to a myth from Ovid's Metamorphoses, alluding to the connection of the Muses with Pyrrha, King Pierus, king of Macedon, had 9 daughters he named after the 9 Muses, believing that the skills were a great match to the Muses. He thus challenged the Muses to a match, resulting in his daughters, the Pyrrhides, being turned into chattering magpies for the presumption. Pausanias records a tradition of 2 generations of Muses, the first of the daughters of Uranus and Gaia, the second of Zeus and Mnemosyne. Another, rarer genealogy is that they are daughters of Harmonia, which contradicts the myth in which they were dancing at the wedding of Harmonia and Cadmus. Emblems. Some Greek writers give the names of the 9 Muses as Kallichori, hair-like, Eunike, Thelsino, Terpsichore, Euterpe, Euclid, Dia, and Enope. In Renaissance and neoclassical art, the dissemination of emblem books such as Cesare Ripa's Iconology helped standardize the depiction of the Muses in sculpture and painting, so they could be distinguished by certain props. These props, or emblems, became readily identifiable by the viewer, enabling one immediately to recognize the Muse in the art with which they had become associated. Here again, Calliope carries a writing tablet, Clio carries a scroll and books, Euterpe carries a flute. The Aulos, Erato is often seen with a lyre and a crown of roses. Melpomene is often seen with a tragic mask. Polyhymnia is often seen with a pensive expression. Terpsichore is often seen dancing and carrying a lyre. Thalia is often seen with a comic mask, and Uranio carries a pair of compasses and the celestial globe. Functions. In society, Greek musa is a common noun as well as a type of goddess. It literally means art or poetry. According to Peintre, to carry a musa, to excel in the arts. The word probably derives from the Indo-European root men, which is also the source of Greek mnemosyne, English mind, mental, and memory, and Sanskrit mantra. The Muses, therefore, were both the embodiments and sponsors of performed metrical speech. Mouseike was just one of the arts of the Muses. Others included science, geography, mathematics, philosophy, and especially art, drama, and inspiration. In the Archaic period, before the widespread availability of books, this included nearly all of learning. The first Greek book on astronomy, by Thales, took the form of dactylic hexameters, as did many works of pre-Socratic philosophy. Both Plato and the Pythagoreans explicitly included philosophy as a subspecies of Mouseike. The histories of Herodotus, whose primary medium of delivery was public recitation, were divided by Alexandrian editors into 9 books, named after the 9 Muses. For poet and lawgiver Solon, the Muses were the key to the good life, since they brought both prosperity and friendship. Solon sought to perpetuate his political reforms by establishing recitations of his poetry, complete with invocations to his practical-minded Muses by Athenian boys at festivals each year. He believed that the Muses would help inspire people to do the best. Invoking the Muse in literature, ancient authors and their imitators invoke Muses when writing poetry, hymns, or epic history. The invocation occurs near the beginning of the work. It asks for help or inspiration from the Muses, or simply invites the Muse to sing directly through the author. Originally, the invocation of the Muse was an indication that the speaker was working inside the poetic tradition, according to the established formulas. For example, Homer, in Book 1 of the Odyssey, "Sing to me of the man, Muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again off course once he had plundered the hallowed heights of Troy." Virgil, in Book 1 of the Aeneid, "O Muse, the causes and the crimes relate, what goddess was provoked, and whence her hate, for what offense the queen of Hev began, to persecute so brave, so just a man." Besides Homer and Virgil, other famous works that included an invocation of the Muse of the first of the Carmina by Catullus, Ovid's Metamorphoses and Amores, Dante's Inferno, Chaucer's Troilus and Cresside, Shakespeare's Henry V, his 38th sonnet, and Milton's Paradise Lost. From cults to modern museums. When Pythagoras arrived at Croton, his first advice to the Crotoniates was to build a shrine to the Muses at the center of the city, to promote civic harmony and learning. Local cults of the Muses often became associated with springs or with fountains. The Muses themselves were sometimes called agonipids because of their association with a fountain called agonip. Other fountains, Hippocrene and Pyrene, were also important locations associated with the Muses. Some sources occasionally referred to the Muses as Corycides, after a cave on Mount Parnassus, called the Corycian Cave. The Muses were venerated, especially in Boeotia, in the Valley of the Muses near Helicon, and in Delphi and the Parnassus, where Apollo became known as ๊mjuːzᵻz after the sites were dedicated to his cult. Often Muse worship was associated with the hero cults of poets. The tombs of Archilochus on Thasos and of Hesiod and Thamyris in Boeotia all played host to festivals in which poetic recitations accompanied sacrifices to the Muses. The Library of Alexandria and its circle of scholars formed around a Mausoleum close to the tomb of Alexander the Great. Many Enlightenment figures sought to re-establish a cult of the Muses. In the 18th century, a famous Masonic lodge in pre-revolutionary Paris was called Les Neuf Sœurs. Voltaire, Benjamin Franklin, Danton, and other influential Enlightenment figures attended it. As a side effect of this movement, the word museum came to refer to a place for the public display of knowledge. Modern use, not only of the Muses explicitly used in modern English to refer to an artistic inspiration, as when one cites one's own artistic muse, but they also are implicit in words and phrases such as a muse, museum, music, and musing upon. In current literature, the influential role that the muse plays has been extended to the political sphere. Gallery.